Good morning. It's 10:02 and a half, and it's on May 20th, 2024. This is a meeting of Municipal Services and Environmental Sustainability Committee. For roll call, I'm going to call on Vice Chair Jim Posh. You here?
Here.
Here. And Member and Council Vice President Davida Russell. Here. We also have Zoe Appisdorf, who is here from Rust Belt Riders, and John Barber has joined us from the Climate and Environmental Sustainability Committee, or just as an individual, whichever you choose. I just want to set the table a little bit for Zoe because she's going to be making a presentation this morning. Rust Belt Riders is a worker-owned cooperative, and it's dedicated to climate resilience, food autonomy, and workplace democracy. Their mission is to, quote, feed people, not landfills,
That's
unquote.
right.
I love that. I just love that. Since 2014, Rust Belt Riders has been working with people and organizations across Northeast Ohio to provide them with a clean and timely alternative to landfills for their food scraps. As the city is developing a climate resilience plan, this presentation is particularly relevant and timely. We can change our behavior in our homes and businesses to reduce food waste. And that being said, Zoe, you've got the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and very nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you.
And yeah, so I'm going to talk about, just to let you know what the presentation is going to be like. I'm going to give you an overview of Rust Belt Riders, the problem of food scraps, food waste, though we often divert from the terminology food waste because there's really nothing to be wasted in a natural system, and food scraps are what can be repurposed locally to make soil with. That's part of our mission. So the feed people part is to be making soil to get back in the hands of farmers, gardeners, potted plant enthusiasts, home gardeners, large, small scale, all of it. Not landfills is to keep the food scraps out of the landfill. Repurpose them locally. Once I talk about that, I'll go into how our services, the whole suite of services is a solution to that problem of food scraps being wasted. And hello. And then at the very end, we've got some 2023 Cleveland Heights statistics so that you know what's already happening. I was pretty impressed. I was actually like, wow, that's quite a lot. So, and then I also was asked by Councilperson Larson to talk about the Beechwood Municipal Service Program that's running currently and share all that I can. I'd be happy to do that when I get into the services component of things.
One moment. We
Sure.
just had Director Clinkscale from Public
Hi.
Works join us. Can you come to the table?
Sure.
Thank you for coming in, Director Clinkscale. That's fabulous. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, so what you're looking at here in this first slide is what our current drop-off sites look like. They are a 3-sided corral with locking containers on them, and then with the signage that shows folks how to get started in the program, what's going on, and what is allowable in the bins. We started here in this really grainy photo with these are two of our co-founders. There were 4 folks in total that started, but these two, Dan Brown on the left and Michael Robinson on the right, started on bicycles collecting food scraps because they were trying to start a community garden in downtown Cleveland in Asiatown, and they were having a hard time accessing healthy soil. There was no healthy soil where they were, and they were also observing a lot of food scraps being wasted in the restaurant industry that they were working in. And so Michael's dad fabricated that bicycle that you see on the right, and they got a couple $1,000s together and started Rust Belt Riders. We do food scrap composting for work and home. So commercial and residential services that we collect that material and then transform it into compost and soil. We are a worker-owned cooperative. So this photo is of us at our vision meeting about 2 years ago. We really believe in local job creation and repurposing abundance. So the food scraps that are, being sent down the garbage disposal or in our trash bins can be repurposed, recycled and made into compost for broad scale application for carbon sequestration or into soil products for resale. So thus the regenerative economies
Did you say resale?
for resell, yes, for reselling.
Okay.
So the regenerative economies of scale, we really want to drive a market and build a market for the soil products that can help continue to revitalize the economy both locally and regionally in a model that is not extractive of its workers, thus the worker-owned cooperative model. Right now there are 15 worker owners, and we also believe strongly in building meaningful community partnerships. So as has always been the case, nothing can be done in isolation from one another. And as much as maybe we believe in a strong single family or, my path is my path, we're exchanging cellular components right now sitting in this room. And so at the very baseline of a scientific observation, we're deeply interconnected, and that extends into the relationships that we build with the partners around us, the people around us, and the environment of which we're a part. So,
Would you prefer questions just,
sure, do you have a question?
I mean,
Yeah, we can, what's our time here today?
Till 11.
Till 11, okay, great. Question.
so is TIF one, when you talked about one of your, repurposing the product,
Mhm.
going to market with,
Mhm.
I think, the
Soil
end result.
products.
So is TIF one of your, TILF?
Yes, that's
One
right.
of your,
TILF is our soil line. So we
Okay.
say that the services of Rust Belt Riders, the collection services, are what TILF products are made from. And
Got it.
we say that because that's what it is.
okay,
But Rust Belt is the service and TILF soil is the product. Yep.
okay.
Yep. So we also, now I want to, by now I mean in this day and age we talk about normalizing composting, but composting is a very old process. This is nothing really new. I think maybe it's been forgotten amongst certain communities, but it's really something that our ancestors have been doing, that we've had to do, be it on farm or for local soil production in your backyard, so that you can be self-supportive. I know that my grandfather's mother, she had a Liberty Garden during the Depression, and so they're all their food scraps, that's where they went. My other side of the family, they always they kept pigs and chickens and that's where their food scraps went. And so it's nothing new, but as memories are forgotten and new practices are built, we want to start normalizing the act of recovering food scraps. It's not something that needs to be thrown in the trash, and so we about 21% of what hits the curb in a average bag of garbage is food scraps, and so right, it's pretty heavy. You'll see at the very end of the presentation we've got quite a number coming out of Cleveland Heights, which is amazing. We are also let's see here so why are other people doing it? Thinking about climate action plan implementations, thinking of holistic recycling services, so all the way wraparound amenities. We've got glass, cardboard, and plastic. Cleveland Heights doing a fantastic job with that, and one of the reasons why it drives me to live here myself. And if we introduce food scraps into that, that's everything people are creating can go to be repurposed. And then I also wanted to share Rust Belt Riders is a part of a national community composting coalition, of which I'm a steering committee member. There are 350 and growing almost every month. There are 2 to 3 more applicants of community composters. That's what we're considered on this scale that we operate on as a community composter. We might collect hundreds of tons of material every year, but that is still very small compared to what's possible.
So
Yeah.
food waste bans mandating
Mm-hmm.
composting, how do they even begin to do that?
State legislation,
Okay, so which states have that?
California, New York is on its way. The city of New York has introduced their composting program. Colorado has introduced food scrap ban. And what we're seeing, I attended a national conference, the United States USCC, United States Composting Conference, USCC. They are, they convene every year. Large scale industrial composters using huge machinery, talking about depackaging machines on wide scale. We also have small community scale composters. What we're seeing and from coming out of other states where mandates are, where mandates are, right? The infrastructure isn't completely ready for it.
Right.
And so in my conversations with other composters and bill writers, they're saying it's okay that Ohio is not there. I've been telling people for at least 3 years since I've really been tuned into it. Mandates will eventually come. We will eventually run out of space in our landfills, though because we're in the Midwest, our our tipping fees and landfills are prolific. The tipping fees are small, the landfill space is prolific. But eventually, we're gonna run out of that space, and so we need to maximize what we can make into soil to prevent that from happening.
I do know that when we were living in Washington State,
Mhm.
they
Also.
on the west side of the state,
Mm-hmm.
they ran out of landfill.
Mm-hmm.
And so they ended up much more expensively trucking everything across the mountain pass.
That's right.
And so there's that, where the location of the landfill may not
Yeah.
be ideal for a large community.
100%. And so this is where we think about, okay, well, how can we do it? We may consider increasing sites or becoming a site host, providing incentives for memberships, and considering, and this is, part of what I talk about with lots of other folks, is contacting the Solid Waste District. They have grants for infrastructure, the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District to start in the county. There are also state and federal grants that cities have access to incentivize composting, pay for a pilot program, understand what it could look like to do it on a drop-off, with a drop-off model like I'm talking about today, or even on a citywide pickup model. There are many places that do that kind of thing. It's something I've been researching to be prepared if that was ever something that we're interested in. So,
Would you mind going back to that slide?
sure,
please? To talk about the statistics over there on that.
Yeah, sure. So this is a infographic that comes from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. They are the organization that hosts the Community Composting Coalition of this national coalition of which we are a part. Every year the U.S. Landfills or incinerates 167 million tons of garbage. And so, with 21% of every bag being food scraps alone. I'm happy to share this presentation with you as well as any of the links.
Thank you very much. I
Yes,
was
for
gonna ask you
references,
that anyway.
definitely. This here is Joe King. We were at the Cam's Corners Farmers Market doing a composting demonstration. Just so folks can see what are we actually talking about when we talk about food scraps. You might not think you make a lot of scraps, but things go to waste. And on the right there, that's a photo of the material that we collect from the Heinen's locations. Those are the really pretty scraps, the stuff that comes out of our household. Sometimes spaghetti and coffee grounds are less as aesthetically pleasing, but as equally as important for making soil. Then I just wanted to share a little bit of our team, what the service can look like. This is Imani on the left. They do our home pickup service. And Heather on the right is dropping a can of Heinen's material. And we do this work year round. So you can see a few snowflakes there coming through. It's manually serviced. And we drop rain, sleet, just like the post office, rain, sun, sleet, or snow. And that's how we do it. So what about us? you know, in Cuyahoga County, we send approximately 150,000 pounds of food scraps to the landfill. We're looking at 20 African elephants. So I want to give, you know, what is a tangible example of that? We lined up 20 African elephants and filled them up with food scraps. That's what we'd be looking at. The other
Is that per year or is that per month? Week?
per year, or 150,000 pounds. Sorry, that would be per month. That stat. So we've got, you know, even, and this is something that not a lot of folks know about. Sometimes I'll give this presentation to community groups as well, just to understand what we're talking about with the service. Even when we send things down the garbage disposal, they go into our solid waste water treatment plant. They get made into food. Well, they get ground up, pulverized, and they come out with all of our other biosolids. When we start looking at the contents of what's in those biosolids, in addition to food scraps, we're looking at pharmaceuticals and many other not so pleasant things. And a lot of that will go straight to an incinerator or a dump, even in our county. Now, we're lucky if it gets I would say pasteurized and turned into topsoil. That is something that the sewer district is looking at implementing. And it's possible, you know, it gets, you know, on corn and soybean fields, being able to sterilize that finished product and apply it. I think that's probably the best case. But not always the most ideal when we're thinking about nutrient contents of that material for plant roots to be able to access. And so when you're talking about the differences between a pulverized and sterilized finished product and a living soil that has, you know, bacteria, protozoa, and, you know, fungi, all sorts of living organisms in it, the difference is astounding in what nutrients are truly available for the plant roots. So we wouldn't be here today without partners. Every time I really want to drive this home, this interconnection. When we first started, Ridall Green Partners and Kurtz Brothers were two of our largest first partners. We also partnered with the Ben Franklin Garden down in Old Brooklyn, Kentucky Gardens, to take the material, because we were collecting the material, but having the space to process it and turn it into that was something that we didn't have in the middle of the city. I think the guys were on Prospect and 30th, and there was not a ton of space to do that. You can do it on small scale. Lots of places do it small scale at community gardens. Some of my, dare I say, idols, or like my dreamscapes, LA Compost, they have a decentralized network of composting sites across LA, Los Angeles, California, and they are just incredible, collect similar tonnage to us, and they spread it out at community gardens for composting. The process itself, not just the soil.
So you guys actually compost at those facilities where you take it and they process it for you?
That's right. Yes, they process it for us right now as we're looking for our own site. Though after even we find our own site, there's enough material to go around. They will still be our partners after our own composting comes in-house. But this is what was required. Once we had partnered with them from the very beginning all the way through to now. Once we received the Heinen's accounts about 2.5 years ago, we had to move our location from Independence. We were leasing the Kurtz Brothers Class 2 facility in Independence, composting all of the material there. Heinen's came on, quickly grew. I mean, they really produce a lot of material, and we transitioned to having the material processed in North Canton at the Kurtz Brothers facility down there. They purchased earth and wood, and they are now doing it in North Canton. So we, unfortunately, right now are making it work. However, we have to pay shipping of that material. We drop it off in Independence. We pay Kurtz Brothers to ship it to North Canton. We pay them to make it into compost, and then we pay them to take it all the way over to Lorain, where we have another partner there who leases us their land that we pay for, and then we turn it into soil. And so we are really trying very, very hard, and things are going well, to find our own sites so that we can consolidate those costs and make our products less expensive for everybody. Make our, and that would it is a working process, albeit an inefficient and cost heavy one. So once we find our own site, we will be looking for the appropriate amount of carbon, because when we compost, you have to have a 2.5, 3 to 1 ratio of carbon to nitrogen. Food scraps being the nitrogen, wood chips, leaves being the carbon. And that will be, a need of ours once we find our site.
Have you reached out to Dave's grocery store for?
So I am not sure if Robert is our commercial liaison. He's reached out. He, works with people. We used to work with Zagaras. Once Dave's bought Zagaras, they closed that contract. Our services do cost, so there's an added cost there when you could just toss it in, and thus the potential incentives for businesses. It's a fee for service program, and a lot of places are already, especially grocery stores, are already cash tight. And so I'm not sure on that, but I'll bring it up with them.
Please give
Just a quick question.
Please.
So I put a lot of stuff down in garbage disposal. So
Uh-huh.
you mentioned about the sewer district.
Mhm.
So I was just wondering if they're processing like pharmaceutical, how can they really change that into something that can be used in a garden?
So that is a fantastic question for the sewer district. That I think it goes beyond my pay grade here, but I can share what I learned from them is that they, there's pharmaceuticals in our waste, in our bio waste. It's not that they take pharmaceutical, like outdated drugs, but we excrete that. And they set through their process, what I have come to learn, they separate the materials, the liquid from the solid, and there's a sterilization process at the end of it. And that's where my knowledge drops off. So definitely something for me to go learn more of, should I continue talking about it.
A sterilization process wouldn't necessarily change the chemical composition of prescriptions.
Right.
There's microplastics
Yeah.
that they haven't started dealing with yet.
Mm-hmm.
So there are issues with sewer districts.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
so
a
that's
tough
why I
challenge,
question, yeah.
right?
That she had spoken with the sewer district.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
You have customers right now, clients in the city of Cleveland Heights. What's your monthly charge? Because you charge for that
Mhm.
service, right?
Yep. So
I'm sorry, you can
Oh,
go ahead.
that's
I don't wanna
okay.
get
Let
it
me-
in.
oops, am I going
You didn't lose
backwards?
track of what you wanted to ask.
That's okay. I'll just pop forward. For our drop-off program, we charge $12 a month. That is for people to access the containers at a time that works for them, at a location of their choosing, and to deposit the amount of waste that they need to.
It's Church of the Savior
Yes, this,
on Bradford.
and the other location is in Cleveland Heights for the second drop-off location in Cleveland Heights is in the adjacent parking lot to Mark's grocery store across the street from the Peace Park.
They were at the Peace Park.
Yeah.
How many months have you been at Mark's now?
Just about 4 maybe.
Yeah. Well, when the
Moved
Peace
in
Park started
February.
to receive the demolition and that, we needed to get them
Yeah.
moved, and so Director Ledbetter helped us get that done.
Yes.
And so we worked with
He
him
was.
there, so.
Yeah, it was great. Real quick, I wanna share with you, so this is the EPA's wasted food scale. I think it's really important to just check this out, see what the EPA is saying about food waste. And it used to be a pyramid, it is now this horseshoe. Let's prevent food waste from happening. Number 1, consider donating or upcycling it. I just learned about this fantastic program that Giant Eagle participates in. You can sign up for an app and they will text you when they have a box of food that you can come get at a discounted rate. So before they have to toss it into the bin, you can come get it at a discounted rate. Then we wanna feed animals or leave it unharvested. So of course, we're thinking about food waste that comes from our home, but if we also have to think about the food waste that comes from the agricultural industries. And I mean agricultural industries, because there's a lot of industry inside of the agricultural sphere where waste happens, either incentivized waste from federal regulations, or things go bad, and so we can feed animals or leave it unharvested, and then we think about composting. Only after we think about donating or feeding animals do we turn to composting. And now, lastly, we look at, and this is last for me, though it's second to last for the EPA, anaerobic digestion. But what's going on, anaerobic digestion being different from composting in that there's no oxygen. They purposefully put food scraps in an anaerobic digester to create methane, to capture that methane and repurpose it as energy or fuel. That's fine. But again, it does not create a living soil to get back into the hands of farmers. And there's of course energy costs that come with that, even with benefits. So this is what we're looking at. Lastly, we want to avoid sending it down the drain, landfilling, or incinerating, as all of what we've just talked about being the outcome of that incineration or landfilling. We have yet to talk about what happens when we landfill or incinerate things, and that's that methane is produced. So when food scraps enter the landfill, they rot, go anaerobic, no oxygen, and they create methane, a greenhouse gas more potent than carbon dioxide on a shorter scale. So it's hotter, faster, which means, of course, that our atmosphere, our ozone layer gets depleted more quickly than just carbon from our cars or other sources.
I'm sorry.
Please.
I'm having trouble processing that.
I know, yeah.
Because methane has been a product of the fracking industry and the gas
100%.
oil well drilling
That's right.
industry for a long time, and we're trying to get them to stop
Yes.
doing the burn offs, the flame offs, and those kinds of things. So we're talking about producing it.
When food scraps enter landfills,
Okay, so all right, there lies.
the landfill produces methane
All right,
when the food scraps are in there, because the food scraps rot. And when they're in that landfill, they come up out of the landfill through the pipes that are in landfills to let out the methane, so there's no explosions
into the environment.
into the environment.
So what happens when an individual is composting at home and taking their scraps and putting it in the dirt?
There's far fewer. If there's this much methane produced, there's this much carbon produced from a home composting pile. So I'm not going to say it's none, but it is not it is not massive. And they have a finished product that they can put back on their garden, and they can grow more food with. They can grow flowers with for pollinators. There's a community benefiting aspect. Also, if you're going to compost in your backyard, you might need to borrow a shovel from your neighbor. You might need help turning your pile. So you can turn to your family or your cousins or your neighbors, like I said. And then you get this social benefit as well as the environmental benefit. And I think that cannot be overlooked here when we think about community benefiting aspects, because we've got, and as I mentioned, it's just, I recently learned what allowed people, anyway, the social aspects of doing it yourself or doing it on a local scale can literally help you live longer. When you know that you have somebody to turn to for help, or your neighbor, you can go there for a glass of water, or you can go there to borrow a shovel.
That's like on Bradford.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So, I assume though that, when you process, when Kurtz Brothers doing all the processing for you, there's gotta be some economy of scale. They are turning it over, there's some rotting in the process. There's methane you're off-gassing some methane, and hopefully, I would assume that because it's a consolidated area, you have a way to trap it.
So there's not, actually, if I may. There's a small amount of carbon that is off gas, but it's almost, it's of decimals.
Okay, so it's none.
It's none. It's next to none.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lastly, before I get into our services, just being considerate of time, I want us to think about what happens when compost is added to soil or topsoils in an instance of helping to protect watersheds. Compost can filter out 60 to 95% of pollutants that stormwater runoff carries. So if we are applying compost in areas that can help filter stormwater runoff, we're gonna be preventing the sewer district, right, as we talked about earlier, from having to do that extra work. It also holds 5 times its weight in water. So when we start to think about drought and the effects of a warming planet, by applying compost, we can also help our water tables hold more water for future generations to come. And I think that I just wanted to emphasize that before getting into our services, so we really understand the impact of the material that we're talking about here. I'd say it's just as important as the sand that's used in concrete. Again, what are we talking about? On the left, I added this picture of wood chips because carbon or wood chips, leaves collected municipally. We work with tree trimmers also to collect their carbon sources, their chipped branches and trees. You need 2 to 3 times as many wood chips or leaves as you do food scraps. 2 to 3 times as many carbons to nitrogens, if you will. So I just wanted to juxtapose those photos there. And of course, the local benefit, that's Robert. When we worked with the West Side Market, we're still composting with the West Side Market, and our friend Emily planting her plants in the backyard in tilth soil. Also Air May and Nathan on a soil mound. And so how do we do it? We've talked all about composting and food scraps. So we collect food scraps in 3 ways, with a drop-off program, a pickup program, and a commercial collections program. Our drop-off program is part of the municipal service that is offered in the city of Beechwood. So I wanna make sure I get to that point. We charge individually paying members $12 a month or $144 a year. Again, they access lock-in containers at a time that's convenient for them, in a location that's accessible, and to bring us the amount of material that they need to. Small, large, what have you,
Is that per person or
Per person.
per family?
per person.
Or house?
Yes, per household, right?
Okay.
So if you have a family in your household and your household participates, $12 a month per household.
In Beechwood, does the city pay for?
In Beechwood, the city pays for it. The city, and they pay per container on site. And our pricing will be changing in 2020, what year am I in? 2024. In 2025, the pricing will be changing. Right now, the city pays $65 a can. We are assessing the feasibility of that with that partnership. And that is they pay for all of their residents, and they pay per can on site. So that's for everybody to be able to access it whenever they need to. There's one location in that city, and it is at the community center.
Joey,
Please.
if I might, did Beechwood do any financial analysis about, or are they tracking now, to say our tipping fees have gone down by this many tons a year, we think, due to the composting process? Frees up public works dollars because they're paying less tipping fees that could then be allocated into the coverage cost for Rust Belt Rider services.
Yeah.
Is there any economic analysis that you can share around the table that would help with that?
I cannot share that information in this very moment. They started the program in April 22nd of this year. And so there will be, and at the very end of the slide, I'll be able to tell you how many tons of food scraps Cleveland Heights kept out of the landfill in 2023 just by commercial and individually paying members. So we can apply an economic analysis to that. It is pretty astounding. As was shared, we ask people to pay $12 a month. Rust Belt Riders, unlike a backyard pile, can compost any food product, meat, bones, and dairy, as well as compostable serviceware that is BPI certified. We do not accept yard waste in our drop-off containers. You know, I don't want somebody putting their yard waste bag in our drop-off containers. Though when we receive our own site, we will be accepting yard waste municipally there from municipal institutions, not in people's, we will not accept yard waste generated like from I'm not gonna say to residents that they can come drop off their waste. We're looking for municipal partners to drop off bulk waste. And no empty cardboard boxes, no oil, and then of course, no trash as well. I'm gonna skip over that one. Please.
How are the people who use the drop-off locations, for instance, doing in terms of complying with that particular?
Really well. They do well.
So they get
They
a sheet
know.
that gives them that information.
When they sign up for service, they receive we handle all the communications. They receive a welcome email that states what can go in the containers, and they are welcome to call us or write us at any point in time. They've got our phone number, our email address at every location that's on our new signage, and they're really encouraged to call us if they don't know. I borrow this from the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District. Oh, no, excuse me. Did I hear it from them or did I hear it from Ren? Anyway, no wish cycling. Do I wish this could be recycled? I'm gonna toss it in the bin anyway. I always tell people, no wish cycling.
Yeah.
Just call us, let us know. Sure.
So can you go back to the acceptable, unacceptable, please? In the bottom right, acceptable
Mm-hmm.
is the BPI certified.
Mm-hmm.
And we now have Heinen's and Dave's are selling picnic plates
Mm-hmm.
and bowls and things like that are BPI certified, and it says so on the outside of the box.
Fantastic.
To close a loop, we hope that we can get the Parks and Rec Department, when they rent picnic shelters, to encourage the people who throw parties at the picnic shelters to use the BPI compostable logoed
Great. Items.
items,
Sure.
so that we're not generating styrofoam and the other kind of typical picnic stuff. So there's a great opportunity for us to work with Parks and Rec to say, if you're gonna rent a shelter house, by the way, please use this material rather than that material, and it's available at these stores.
Nice. That's
And
great.
Those two stores were, John? Heinen's and what was the
And
other one?
Dave's.
Dave's.
But it must have that logo on it. And that, there's a lot of things out there that say compostable or biodegradable that don't have that logo, and we will not accept those items.
Just so I know the
Yeah.
the end game of this conversation, and keep
Yeah.
in mind, I was just thrown on council in a very,
Great.
in a very, very nice way. in the last
Welcome.
The is one of the things that this committee is gonna be reviewing is possibly having a relationship like Beechwood. Is that one of the
That's where my
things
thoughts
that's,
are going. We need to
Okay.
work with Director Clinkscale and the administration on that.
okay, so it's still even, you have to work with staff, obviously. So I do have a question for staff then about that and when it comes to our recycling program, and just really quick or offline. So I'm not looking for an answer right now, but do our citizens follow the directions for the recycling today? Or is there a problem?
Not all. They do a pretty good job overall, but we still have issues with a lot of folks wish cycling or also putting their regular trash into the recycling. But we've trained our drivers to just leave, if they see some type of contamination in the recycling.
Don't get tempted.
If it's very visible, they will not pick up the card. And just to put things in perspective,
Yeah.
you said that Beechwood has a program where they're paying the $12 per month per household.
They pay right now, in this day, they pay $65 per can on site,
Monthly.
monthly. No. The municipal program pays $65 per can that's on site and serviced. So our truck services once a week,
Oh, okay.
and they service a 64-gallon container. There are four 64-gallon containers on site at Beechwood. Every time those cans are serviced by us, it's $65 that gets charged to the city for every can.
Oh, I've really misunderstood you, because I'm thinking $65 per can that's at an individual's property.
No.
These are
Located.
locations,
Yes.
different
Yeah, every
locations. So
time.
it's two cans at every location?
Let's look at this site, let's pause, let's look at this
Okay.
site requirements. Okay, you can see these 2 cans here serviced by Peter on the left.
Mm-hmm.
At Beechwood, there are 4 of those cans for Beechwood, for the municipal program
At the community center.
at the community center.
Oh,
So you can imagine 4 of those locking cans serviced every week.
okay.
Each time one of our drivers puts that can on the truck to take it away, full of material, $65 per can.
Okay.
today. Our private sites or as opposed to the municipally funded collection, there's a resident private, by private I mean individually paying, where the household pays. That's the $12 a month program. Okay, and those are community sites where you come to us and drop off your material. So this one here on the right is at Lomond School in Shaker Heights. This one here on the left is at the Phoenix Coffee in Ohio City. This is the site, this is us dropping off one of our corrals at the Westlake Library, Porter Public Library. And these are the individual sites that we have on the east side. So you can see that they're peppered around here.
And I think it's a great program, but I'm just keeping things in perspective based on what I know from our residents. It seems like the folks that would most likely do the best good in a program like this, it's unaffordable for them, because right now we charge $14 per month to pick up your trash every week. And ask somebody $12 per month to participate in this program that would make the most impact. I don't think that you're gonna get those folks to participate.
Yeah, I think that, and that's where we start to look at state and federal funding available for municipalities to do an assessment project on if you can find funding available to you to figure out, okay, let's not have to have this money come right out of the city's budget off the rip, right? And say, okay, how much tonnage can we keep out of the landfill of garbage? I want you to know, you guys diverted with individual members 106 tons last year of food scraps. And that's with people having to pay that $12 a month or commercial clients picking up the waste on their own. And so, that amount of material that if we can figure out, if more people in the city don't have to pay for it themselves and the city can do a pilot project to say, we're gonna get as many people composting as possible, how much weight can we actually keep out of our trucks? How many less times do we have to do repairs on our garbage trucks because of the weight? Food scraps are full of water. They're heavy. Those cans that you saw in those pictures being serviced are often 300, 400 pounds, and people are moving those, right? And the problem that people do have to pay, it's kind of a joke. Like, sometimes you have to pay for this service, right? Like, that's incredible, and people care about it, and so they choose to pay for it. But for the folks that can't pay for it, that is, part of our mission is to figure out how do we make this service accessible to people regardless of their ability to pay. And
And even
Yeah.
considering their ability to pay, I
Mhm.
think that it would still, I think a lot has to go into this, if the city even thought about doing it.
Right.
I mean, this is like
Mhm.
years into the future. Because even if the people did not have to pay, again, the people or the demographic that would most likely impact the program the most is not gonna drop off even if it's free, you know? I think that you may have an increase in folks participating.
Mhm.
But for someone that may not have a car, may not
Right.
have transportation, to take, and number one, do the composting
Right.
at home.
Yep.
And then take it to a composting site. I just don't think we're being
It's a heavy lift.
realistic.
I hear you. It is a heavy lift, and it is, so that is where we also start to think about, there are other there are other services like ours. There's one in Chicagoland in Illinois, right outside Chicago. They give all their the people that participate in this program, they give them a small 32-gallon container, and they come around with a truck and they pick it up. There are food waste the City of Cleveland was just awarded a food waste reduction grant that paid them to do an assessment on what is this going to, how are we gonna be able to increase access to residential composting. They chose to go with our drop-off program to try to do that. I hear it every day when I'm talking with folks from the City of Cleveland. They say, you want me to do what? You want me to put my food scraps in a bucket and then take the bucket and dump it off and then do that process all over again and over again. It is certainly, there are many barriers in the program that I'm describing to being able to access that. The idea then would be, to diminish some of those barriers. I would love to know, when we start to think about that, where are people traveling the most? Where are people traveling? Where are they already going? Can you locate a location like this at a public services space like schools, daycares, grocery stores, making sure that when we're choosing more locations, they're chosen on primary bus lines, making sure that you have containers that are carryable. So a 5-gallon bucket can get pretty heavy, but implementing 2-gallon buckets and having it as a regular part of the day, or even at the end of every street. So I'd say that the Church of the Savior is a fantastic model. It's right at the end of a street. How many of those at the end of the street could be? And those, it's certainly, the challenges that you bring up are 100% real. And, we look at 148 members from 148 residents from Cleveland Heights diverted 35 tons of material in 2023. 250 residents diverted 250 residents through the drop-off program diverted 35 tons of material. And just 12 commercial clients in Cleveland Heights diverted 36 tons of material in 2023. 106 tons of material kept out of garbage trucks, kept out of the landfill, going towards the city's sustainability efforts, thinking about, the amount of carbon that's offset from that. I think that this is just from people paying for it themselves, the people, that the early adopters, if you will. And thus, it's not, the other thing that's important to remember here is that while food scrap composting isn't new, it's something that people certainly have to get comfortable with again. Getting comfortable with, oh yeah, right, my banana peel's gotta go in this one instead of this one. And so working with us to create some type of, there's tons of resources for education campaigns. What does it look like in your own house? How do you find out what's the right thing? There's certainly steps to intercept people on their continuum of change where they're ready to say, okay, I'm gonna make this change or I'm not. And if they're not, let's talk about it. Why not? What does it look like for you? Where do you eat? And that's where you start. I was just at an event this weekend at Rev Love Community Garden down in Kinsman, and I just talked with people about where they ate. What was the last meal they had? What's it like when you have meals with your family? What do you guys like to eat? And that is where you really start to, and I think, build relationships. And you're building a relationship with your food, you gotta build relationships with people. It's just as important. So,
I've got a question, couple of
Please,
questions.
yeah.
And then I'll get to you.
Oh, please.
Counselor Posh, how much does the commercial business pay you per bin?
it's $30 to $40 a container
For a
after
weekly
assessment.
pickup?
For a weekly pickup, and that's per container. So if a commercial client, Phoenix Coffees in Cleveland Heights, they produce one full container every week.
All those coffee grounds.
All those coffee grounds, right? Yep, every last one. Zagaras, when I serviced them, they were producing up to 6 containers a week.
That leads me to a question about the coffee grounds.
Mhm.
Those filters are not the BPI.
The filters are acceptable. Filters and food soiled paper napkins are acceptable.
Did you get a chance to think about a location on north of Mayfield at all?
I didn't yet. No, I'm sorry. Yes, last week was a lot.
That's all right.
Happy to look at a map.
Yeah, I really would like to have you do that.
Great.
I think we can with our new library reopening in
Mhm.
Noble. Might have an opportunity to do some education and
Yeah.
so.
So, were you all finished?
I am finished, go ahead.
Beautiful.
So, we are one of your, my family is one of your pickup customers.
Thank you.
I think we're in for 2 buckets of, a week.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying, just so you can put everything in perspective.
Great.
So I think another alternative, so you have the Beechwood model.
Mhm.
And I think if you do a little due diligence and I think it would be helpful for this group to have some of the data that was presented to Beechwood.
Sure.
Just to analyze, does this kind of thing make sense? Should we jump on that kind of bandwagon?
Mm-hmm.
And there's gonna be some cost
Sure.
and it would probably be difficult. I can't speak for staff, okay?
Mhm.
But I can imagine throwing this on them right now
Oh.
would be a difficult lift initially. So, I think once we start figuring this out, then we might be able to engage staff just to help us understand if this is something that can actually be
Sure.
digested by them.
Okay.
But it is kind of off the radar. It's something that's not
Yeah.
in mission. I look at the 400 customers that you have, and if part of what we want to do, for the public good, to expand the program, maybe we want to get your 400 to 800.
Right.
And not involve public works.
Sure.
Maybe there's a way that we could work out maybe a bulk buying program.
Okay.
So we're not expending any money at all, but maybe what we're doing is we're finding a way of giving you additional customers
Sure.
at maybe a lower price point. And I'm not trying to beat you up with price.
I understand.
Maybe that's not the route to go.
Yeah.
Maybe it makes sense to maybe just maybe use some of our publicity and some of the things that we can do from a marketing perspective to try to market this.
That'd be great.
It seems to me that this whole concept makes a lot of sense. I was blessed. I was just in France and it was very noticeable on the subway, people having their little pails of composting. And it just wasn't 1 or 2. These are busy subways
Right.
in Paris, and they all had their little buckets of compost that they're going to a central spot during the weekend. It was like so noticeable. It was like astounding. It's like,
Yeah.
Joyce is nudging me, says, "Look at that! I need to bring that to Shaker."
Yeah.
My wife
Sure.
works for Shaker.
Okay. Sure.
And it's just kind of interesting, just sort of seeing how it's taken off and people do it. I will tell you from a personal perspective, I was thrown into this unwittingly with my kids. They
Mhm.
gave us the subscriptions as a holiday present,
Nice.
which I didn't appreciate it as I appreciate it now. I mean, I am very,
Cool.
very good at opening up the bucket in the kitchen and throwing
Yeah.
stuff in there. Very, very good at it, to a point. Well, I'm OCD, so that's a whole other.
Okay, heard.
But I mean, it really does make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, why should it go down
Right. Any.
down the sewer if someone could benefit from this, and it takes no extra work?
Mhm.
But it's a change of mindset.
That's right.
How can we get our people to understand? I mean, 400 is a very, 400 households is a teeny
Something.
piece. And
Yeah.
and maybe, and knowing a community like Cleveland Heights, and we've got lots of other important messages, social impacting things that we want our people to understand and appreciate. But maybe there's a way that we can try to put together a goal where we try to double that in a
That'd
year.
be great. Love to have that conversation. And I'd like to respond. No extra work has to be done from Public Works in a municipal program. Zero. We service the containers. We have them on a site that our drivers look at. There is no extra ask from the city from city staff, from employees, from Public Works, from literally anyone. The ask from in any program from any site host, maybe I can,
Well,
is that you keep the area in front of the containers clear from snow in the same way that you do the sidewalk or the entry to the building that they're at. Because we provide all the service, we pick up the containers every week, and it's my hope that in a partnership, there's no burden on the site host or on any Public Works staff ever. And that is like core to what being a good partner is in my mind.
so I can't speak for the city,
Mhm.
one council member,
Mhm.
but
Sure.
when there's negotiated agreements, you
Mhm.
may not be able to have another competing service. When you have people running the garbage trucks, for example, there may be some contractual limitation that the city may have. I don't know.
Sure.
Again, I'm just thrown into this in a nice way.
Good to know.
And, for example, if we try to have other people in the school district teach, that's a no-no, because that is a restricted amount of work that you can only have a unionized teacher do for you. Plus also if there's budget
Sure.
issues, so.
Good to know. Thank you.
I'm
And
gonna-
we currently pay Kurt's, we take our yard waste to
Mhm.
Kurt's.
Mhm.
So I guess they do use some of the yard waste in
Yeah.
this process.
Yes.
And we're paying for that right now.
Yeah.
We pay $5 approximately if we take it to Kurt's,
Yeah.
about $5 a yard. We're paying probably close to $50,000 a year.
Yeah, for the yard. So my director of soil, Nathan Rutz, I think he had a conversation with you a number of years ago.
Last year.
Last year, when we activate our own, he said, please tell director, when we activate our own site, we wanna take your yard waste for zero cost.
But we do take our loose leaves
Uh-huh,
for zero cost to a
Great.
few people.
yeah,
And we tried to coordinate with Nathan
Mhm.
last year to go to Rust Belt
Right.
Riders. We actually went and visited the site and
Great.
everything, but it was just, it didn't take off. Not from our effort that we put forth. We just could not coordinate
Yeah.
with Rust Belt Riders.
Yeah, we don't have our own site yet. We have a site identified. We're in the middle of contract negotiations. As things progress, when that site gets activated, we would like to take the waste at zero cost. And so that would be a conversation that we'll reinvigorate when that happens.
I'm gonna start to think about closing.
Yeah,
Anybody
thank
else
you.
have any other questions?
I would just like to bring up to the group that all of the elementary schools in Shaker right now have front of counter and back of counter composting through Rust Belt Riders. And one of Zoe's coworkers is now working with Canterbury School to put the same kind of front of counter, back of counter composting in Canterbury schools. So we're bringing up the next generation, hopefully to have the expectation that something composting wise is gonna be there. Especially if we can spread it to the other elementary schools in Cleveland Heights.
Yeah.
Thank you, Zoe.
It would
Thank
be
you.
great if they had like gardens where they could just see it all the way through, you know.
Yes.
Yeah,
And a lot of folks are gardening now,
They
so
are?
wherever you do those composting demonstrations, if you could let us know, we'd be happy to try to get the word out as much as we could.
cool. That would be great. Yeah, and
Community gardens.
yeah, I also just talked with Sarah Constanza from Food Strong. She does community gardens at
Yeah, I work with her a lot.
Yeah, so I talked with Sarah about making sure that there's a composting we're gonna go into every school that Food Strong is in to do composting as a part of their gardening education program as well.
And
Yeah.
I did communicate with our coordinator of climate and resiliency.
Mm-hmm.
Coordinator Boateng said that
Yeah.
composting will be a part of the climate action and resilience plan that's being developed. So there's another avenue for us to educate people, to get the
Great.
word out, and
I must have talked with Andy like day 3.
yeah, thank you. So
Yeah,
I think that's really important, that's why I started this off by saying
thank you.
it's relevant to what
Yeah.
we're doing in the city right now.
Right, yeah, and you know, when the city, I would also encourage the city to look into what kind of carbon offsets you can report on and utilize when thinking about transportation offsets. So can the amount of waste that's composted go to offsetting the amount of emissions generated from city vehicles? That's something that many cities will do. And as a way to further a climate resiliency plan, just something to consider,
Yeah, I think that was talked about.
right? Nice.
Everybody good?
Other
Everybody good?
questions?
Good to see you as well.
All right.
Good.
Nice to meet
I'm
you.
gonna
Cool.
It's
Okay,
call this meeting
Thank you.
adjourned at 11:04 on the 24th of May 2024. So thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you.
yes,
Thanks, Zoe.
thank you,
So-
nice to meet you.